to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome to this week's edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Jim Langford, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at Alta High School. Welcome to the podcast, Jim.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience here in Utah and across the nation and the world where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
So I grew up, I kind of moved around a little bit. My dad taught computer science at a number of different colleges. I was born in Rexburg, Idaho, and then bounced around a couple of different places, but then ended up in Orem, Utah while he worked at UVU. It used to be Utah Tech back then. Graduated from Mountain View High School in '92, and then signed a football scholarship to go to Southern Utah University and went to Cedar City. Completed my eligibility years there. Finished in would have been the fall of 1998, and finished student teaching during my last season playing football, and literally got hired in January in the Iron County School District as a PE teacher and coach, and stayed there. Had already met a beautiful girl, married her, had 5 children, and coached. And I tease people, and I tease my current coaches, that my wife raised our family as a single mom, because I coached football, basketball, and track at Canyon View High School for over the course of 12 years. 10 of those years as the head basketball coach. And then moved from being the head basketball coach and a teacher to being the athletic director and vice principal. It was a good move, good change of gear for me and my family. I did it the exact same year that my oldest daughter became a freshman in high school, so she never had her dad as a teacher. She dodged that bullet. She didn't have to have me. And my kids started coming through school, and I spent the next 10 years as an administrator. I spent 5 there at Canyon View as the athletic director, vice principal, and then I changed gears again and became the principal at Joab High School in Nephi, Utah. I did that administrative position for 5 years. During that time, I served on the UIAAA executive committee, and did.
I remember it well. Yes.
Yeah, I did a number of different roles while I was there, and then shifted gears again. And actually, I blame my wife for the next move. I probably needed a break after doing COVID as a high school principal was brutal. Some rough years there, and a lot of hard things we all had to do. I was ready for a break without asking her, but she got offered a position with the Utah State Board of Education. And we took the opportunity for me to explore positions in the Salt Lake Valley so that she could fulfill her job. And I was lucky enough to get hired as a teacher last year at Alta. Spent 1 year as a teacher, and then during the middle of that year was hired to be the athletic director for an outgoing icon, Morgan Brown, who had been the athletic director here for literally decades. Very well established, and it's a day doesn't go by that someone doesn't come in looking for him, and sad to find me instead. And we have to talk for a minute about how great he was. And he really set a high bar as far as relationships with kids and athletes and the community at whole. He did a great job.
Allow me to ask a follow-up. So you're at Canyon View, and you just decided the AD job opened. You'd had enough of coaching. They asked you, you applied for it. How did that work?
So it was actually a lot of different things. I'll be honest with you. I'd watched a couple of my other friends, former college teammates, coach their children. And I was currently coaching my oldest son, who was in junior high, in his junior high sports programs, and listening to a lot of complaints from parents and different things. And I just felt like my kids needed to be the focus, not the dad. They needed a dad. They didn't just need a coach. And my children, all 5 of my children, and I can say that they've had amazing coaches. They've participated in all kinds of activities. All 5 of my children did something. Most of them did more than one sport in high school in those experiences. My oldest was able to do cross country, track for a little while, and then shifted from track her junior year into golf. Then I had another daughter who ran cross country and then got a little bit more involved in FCCLA in high school. Then I have a son, the one that I was coaching in junior high when I made that switch. He was able to play basketball and golf and track and do a lot of different things in high school and had a wonderful experience. And then I had a daughter who was very shy, and high school golf got her out of her shell. She's having an amazing experience. In fact, right now, she just finished her freshman year at BYU, but she's actually participating in unified golf with the BYU Special Olympics program and having a wonderful experience, still taking those athletics into the next stage and different thing. And it's awesome. If you don't get a chance to watch unified sports at the college level, they're playing golf at Top Golf, and what a fun venue and fun experience for her. And then I've got a son that's still in high school right now. He's going to be a junior at Alta High School. He's played football before, but he's focused on basketball right now. And I can honestly say changing from a coach to an athletic director was a huge blessing for me, huge experience, and wonderful opportunity for me to be able to be dad and not just coach. There's some people who balance that so beautifully. But that was a huge part of my decision to move into administration. And I'd already finished my administrative degree. I was already looking at it. And I can tell you, our administration that hired me to go from coach to athletic director were super excited to see me bring my level of just focus and attention to detail into the whole department, not just into the programs that I was a part of. I didn't understand kind of that whole dynamic of some people not being as good in some of those areas of paperwork and register my athlete and scheduling and buses and all the things that went involved in it. I didn't know how you could coach without having that done way beforehand. And I'm learning very quickly that some coaches need help preparing and seeing how easy their season can be if things like that are done way in advance. And I've been able to make that difference. It's been very fulfilling. I can honestly say that I loved coaching. I loved practice. I loved what it was. I love those experiences with kids, but I also, I found it a little bit more fulfilling to coach the coaches and coach the adults and to go enjoy games. I was one of those that, as a player, I wanted to go out and alter the game and, make this tackle or make that play or score that basket or box out with that much more effort. And then as a coach, you realize you can't go make extra effort. Your preparation is really done. That hay is in the barn when the game arrives. And, there's a different element of it when you realize you can't impact the game as a coach the way you could as a player. And there's a frustration on game day, and that's not always frustration, but just things you would do differently if you were able to get out on the field and change those things. And you can coach them up and you can do different things, but to remove the stress of game day. Now game days for me are wonderful. I love it. I love to sit and watch kids and build relationships with them and see those wonderful parts of high school athletics and kids that learn resiliency and how to respond to striking out or how to respond to a dropped pass, and how to become successful through failing is awesome. And I think that's something that as a coach, I had a hard time enjoying. And so it's been wonderful to me to make that change into athletic administration and be able to impact things a little bit more like I did as a player, I guess you could say. It's been very fulfilling.
Let's have you talk for a moment about some of the mentors that you've had in your life that have had a big effect on how you've turned out.
Oh, man, we could go way over time right now. You're going to get a whole list. When I lived in Orem, my high school athletic director was a guy named Joel Gardner. We lived in the same.
Joel well.
Yeah, Joel's a great man, and he kind of started me out noticing things before I was even in high school, because he was actually, if you know the LDS faith at all in our church, he was assigned as my home teacher. He was the one taking care of my family, just checking on us and making sure we were good. And so I learned to watch him and see what he did. And then I had wonderful coaches in high school. I had Carl Ingersoll, if you know that name, as a head coach, and then that shifted. And my sophomore basketball coach was a guy named Rob Cuff. He's pretty good around here.
Yeah.
And then my football coaches, I had two of those. I had Steve Park, who went on to be an administrator and and principal for a long time. And then a guy named Bryce Munson. Those were my two football coaches because they shifted in the middle. They were both fantastic. And then Coach Hool, our track coach. And man, I had so many, even in those younger grades. You know, Mike O'Connor over at Westlake was one of my sophomore coaches. Just so many just in high school. And then you shift to college. My college coaches, I played for Jack Bishop as a recruit, and then had two other coaches. I had, I'm going to forget his name, Rich Ellerson for 1 year, and then C. Ray Gregory at SUU. So I had, you know, 3 different college coaches and learned from them. Had great administrators and teachers at SUU. They call it the coaching factory for a reason. And I got to know Dr. Lunt very well. And man, that list of people who have molded me into noticing the difference that high school athletics and education-based athletics can make in a young person's life were just fluid and rich. My first athletic director when I was a head coach was Steve Hodson. And Steve was amazing, you know, just carrying through those same processes. My first, even before that, when I was a JV basketball coach, I was under a guy named Randy Simpkins, who's, you know, his coaching prowess has just blossomed at Dixie State as a softball coach. They've been nationally ranked and just wrecked all kinds of records there in the last few years during his tenure, and done fantastic things. So I can honestly say the mentors for me, even before I moved into athletic administration, were just rich and just molded me into so much more than I probably would have ever been without those people. And then as I came into athletic administration, some of those in my region, you know, the Mike Bears at Dixie, and you know, Richard Barton, you know, we ended up in their region in Richfield for a little while. He reached out and took care of me, and man, you know, I just can't even begin to describe how much mentorship that I've received. I've probably underachieved based on the amount of positive influences in those areas that I've had as a coach and an athletic administrator. And I hope I can live up to the number of people who've invested in me at some point. It's been amazing.
That is a great list of leaders. Thank you so much for sharing. Let me ask you this personal question, Jim. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, God. Yeah, I saw that question on there. I was hoping you'd skip over it. I don't dwell very much on my failures. Obviously, I've failed a lot being involved in the things I've been involved in, being a high school athlete. You know, I talked about one of my favorite things is what you do, you know, after strike one, or after you've struck out, or after you've dropped a pass. And I think it would kind of blend into my answer for my biggest failure is my memory's pretty short. You know, I haven't been perfect at very many things, but I can say I shift gears and move and try to do better pretty quickly, you know, without really dwelling on, you know, too many negative things. You know, I stub my toe all the time. You know, I've gotten speeding tickets before, and I say tickets, I think I've only had 2 in my life, one at 16 and then one probably, God, I think I was like 22 or 23. But boy, I slow down right after that for a long time. And it's kind of that same thing in my whole life. You know, if I've messed up, I think, you know, and part of that's my wife and my upbringing, my parents, and part of that's the people around me. I don't lay on the ground very long. You know, I feel like I've been able to rebound and see different things and really focus on positives. You know, I had some great advice from Steve Hodson when I was first a head coach and went through the process of picking a team and having to make cuts. You know, that's such an emotional experience for a coach the first time and every time, because you're selecting kids who are going to be a part of your program, but it's also hard not to focus on the kids that you've removed and how getting cut affects them. And Steve made some really good points to me about focusing on those who make it and focusing on those positives and the difference that it can make in their lives, and make it that kind of program. And then focusing on teaching them to be worthy of that opportunity. You know, how do they treat their classmates in the hall? And I can't remember how he worded it. It was something about being respectful to the fallen ones or the cut ones, or, you know, and we talked at length about, you know, how do you show empathy and respect for those who came to try out that you beat? And it's part of that same sportsmanship feeling with wins and losses. How do you win and how do you lose? And are we teaching kids how to do that? Are we teaching coaches how to do that? Young coaches, you know, I had that experience with Steve as my athletic director through my first wins and losses, and learning to keep that even keel through both. It can be an emotional roller coaster, and how do you handle it? How steady are you? And so I guess all of those experiences, to answer your question about my biggest failures, I've kind of been taught not to let them be big. Without, I'd probably have to go back and dig. Maybe it was the beautiful girl that wrote me a Dear John letter on my mission, if I was being specific. And what did I learn from it? Boy, I married beautiful, so I must have learned something good. I married,
That's awesome.
and they were both great, but yeah, those are probably those things, right?
That's a great outlet, a great answer to that question, because I usually ask that of all my guests, and that's a great outlook on that. I need to throw a special shout out to you, because you are a graduate of SUU, a member of the Coaching Factory. I say this without exaggeration. Easily 1 out of 4 guests I have on this program are graduates of SUU and, are from the Coaching Factory at SUU. So you're a great example of that. And so you're to be congratulated. My next question is about the job of athletic director and how it's changed since you first got the job down at Canyon View.
Well, it's really kind of been influenced by legislation. I can say that because I paid attention and watched, but and I don't remember if it was my last couple of years as a head coach or my first couple of years as an AD when Register My Athlete came on, and the number of things that we're doing as far as certification and paperwork. There's a lot more. With more information comes more responsibility, right? And we know more information about our kids through the computer programs we use to administer schools and grades. I remember as a high school boy, I'm going to get in trouble for sharing this, but as a high school student, to get checked out of school at Mountain View High School in 1991, there was a signature card in the office with my mom's signature on it, and a note would come in from home, and the secretaries would check that the signatures matched. That's how you got a note to get excused from school. Well, some kids in that age, I'm probably the reason that there's better things now, may or may not have learned the trick of signing the original signature card. So I may or may not, not to incriminate myself, I may or may not have been able to write notes to get out of school. And I may have had to apologize to my little brother, who was a sophomore when I was a senior, when he got called in on a note that he had written to get excused from school that my mom had signed, that they balked on because it didn't match my signature of my mom's name. So, we have so much more information about students and grades and attendance that we track, right? We want to help them perform at a high level. And the administration side of that, from an athletic director's point of view, we know who is and isn't in class. We know what their grades are. We're doing midterm grade checks. We're doing quarter grade checks. And there's a lot of technology to help us with that. But I really feel like the number of things that I'm checking now, and not just, eligibility and attendance, and, then it goes to fees, and then it goes to, transportation requests and bus requests. And as all of those things have kind of, I take a look at what Morgan Brown did here at Alta High School compared to what I did in my first stint as an athletic director week 1 at Canyon View. He's been given a lot more hats to wear, and he's accepted those and done a beautiful job with it. And I'm hoping to do as good as he did. But it seems like when people find those people who will do things in any job, but in schools especially, they let them do them. They give them those extra jobs. And so the evolution of athletic administration has really taken on more and more and more. The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head that's even been removed from an athletic director's duties since I took the job first is painting fields, because we have turf football fields now.
Right.
I can remember year 1, that was almost a full day job for me to paint the game field and the practice football field. I had my paint clothes on, and I was out there pushing and stringing lines, and that was a full day's worth of work. And now our football field is turf. We've got football and lacrosse and soccer lines on it, and it's just a different experience as far as that. But that's really the only thing I can think of off the top of my head that's been removed from my plate as an athletic director in 11 years. I can think of a lot of little things that have been added to it. double checking the fees and are we compliant? And I had my athletic director my last year at UAB take over school fees for all athletic programs and be the one that presented to the school board to get them approved. We just keep adding jobs, and that's not a bad thing. The jobs need to be done, and almost every athletic director I know is a doer. I did it to my athletic director as a principal, and I can already feel my principal doing it to me. They find the people who do the jobs and they give them a couple more responsibilities and a couple more and a couple more, which isn't bad. We can be good and we can be efficient. It does become a little daunting when I think about how I would train someone to be an athletic director. You almost have to be in a formal internship type program to realize what is involved in the job. I don't sit much. I was kind of glad you invited me to be on this so I could come sit down and not be grinding through something and working on something. Spent a lot of hours here this summer, so I feel prepared to go into the fall.
That's because you got the whatever they've got, the black and white football game today or tomorrow, the inter squad. So you got that to worry about. Yeah.
I just double checked. I had all my officials ready. They're good to go.
Let me ask you this, because you may be the only person in all the time I've had guests on this show, started as a teacher, then a teacher coach, then an AD, then a principal, then an assistant principal, then back to a teacher, and now back to an AD. And so I want you to talk about because usually you just climb up and you stay there, if that's the right word. But you've been up that ladder, you've been down that ladder, you're up that ladder again. I want to give me some perspective on that, because that has to be somewhat rewarding and changing, but then it also has to be a little bit of a, I don't know if disappointment's the right word, but just a change for you.
So yeah, there's some emotions attached to all those different things, but probably not the ones that you expect. It was probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my life to take all of the knowledge of school systems as a former administrator and step back into the classroom and teach for a year. I would recommend that to anyone. It was wonderful again. It was great. Man, super fun. But I actually, I did miss being an athletic director. I probably without any warning would have skipped being a teacher and gone right back from a principal to an AD if there would have been a position open that I'd found in that little window that my wife had a job and I was looking in this valley up in the Salt Lake Valley.
Sure.
So it really was motivated by her, but man, what a rewarding time to go back in the classroom and go back to this. I'll be honest, one of the things that's been super hard and I didn't see this coming is I almost feel guilty, right? Watching things that I could affect and change as a spectator. I ended up volunteering pretty quick during the basketball season to go run the clock at the games and to do an even more professional job last season. And just little things like that it was good for me to have to sit and watch and not be in a position where I would step on toes and make decisions and alter some of those things. But that was a hard I wasn't ready for. And eligibility and I was blessed with wonderful mom and parents. And like I said, all those mentors I had before and being able to talk parents through some of the hard things of getting cut or eligibility or grades. Or a tough call by an official even. I went gutsy during football last year when no one knew who I was. I went and sat in the parent section in the stands. And I'm just some random guy sitting there. They didn't know who I was and got to kind of hear as a fly on the wall their emotions as calls happened they didn't agree with officials and or calls by the coach on a play that they didn't like. And man, there's some passion, right? There's some things there. But I wasn't in a position or a role to put my arm around them and say, hey, this is how you help your kid be resilient and not break down, but break through when things get hard. And this is how we focus on the next play. Whereas now in the role, I'm going to go back and do that again is going to be a good and rewarding experience. But that hard for a year when I was a spectator and not involved I wasn't ready for that to be hard. That was weird for me to experience, almost a guilt that I wasn't trying to help them process and work through things, but I didn't have a relationship with them or a position or any reason. It was awkward. I'll tell you that was a learning experience for me to kind of process through what I would say and how I would handle it. And not all bad, but definitely a few lessons I wasn't expecting to learn. It was good. But the go down and back up and all those things, it was so rewarding. A deliberate move, more geographical than anything else, but way more rewarding than I expected. Even, teaching the kids, but also to be in a department just as a, pseudo new teacher. I didn't tell anybody when I first got hired that I'd been in all those positions. And so I got plugged back into a regular PE department with some young teachers that didn't know what I knew. And it only took a little while, and it was, hey, how did you do that? Wait a minute, your class, and so fun, right? To sneak up on them. And then I had one of them kind of give me a bad time about, you played us. And I was like, yeah, I kind of did. It was fun. I've managed, I was one of those teachers when I got to about year 6 or 7, I was asked by my principal to take 65 kids in each of my PE classes because I was so good at hurting that many. And I did, and you've got to be creative. But after a week or two, we knew what we were doing. I knew how to get the ducks in rows and organize it all and play some super fun leagues and games. It almost turned into intramurals. We had so many things going at once, and so many kids participating at high levels. It was super fun. So managing the little PE classes they gave me this last year were almost too easy. It was kind of fun. But
well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that insight. That's valuable information. I want you to go back to, I believe, and of course, I'm almost 70, so you have to check me on this, but I think it's maybe 2015, 2016. You became a certified athletic administrator. I want you to speak about that process, and then to our audience about the importance of becoming certified and why you decided to become certified.
Well, it really comes back to the quality of the first 2 or 3 classes I had that were LTI classes and how they affected me in my job. And I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but there was one in September, and then the first 1 or 2 I took at the conference when I was talked into going to it. The inevitability of me becoming certified was just a result of the impact the classes were making on me as an administrator, on what I looked for at games, on how I went about my job, and how prepared I felt, including the mentorship of the others in classes, the relationships I built with those I was going through classes with. I don't know that I could have been effective without it. I used a lot of the things from my LTI class as a principal, not just as an athletic director. I used those lessons, those skills, those philosophies really bled into everything that I did. And so taking the final test at the end really wasn't anything but a natural result of me seeing how effective they were in affecting me on the job daily. I completed that. You're right. It was like 2015. It was within the first 2 to 3 years of me being an athletic administrator at Canyon View High School. And man, huge. I went so far as to turn around and take some of my people as a principal down to the UIAAA conference. I know I took our district's legal counsel down to the school law year in review with Dr. Green one year. Huge experience
I remember when you were at UAAP, right?
Yeah, when I was at UAAP, I brought legal counsel down so he would see, because he was dealing with not a lot, but he was dealing with a couple of athletic issues and people calling the district, and him not knowing really where how protected he was in his role with some of these athletic issues and legal issues that go along with it. So it was wonderful. So that kind of all goes into the importance of getting certified, but I can't imagine being an effective athletic administrator at all without that training. And I love what I went through and got my degree, my master's degree with administrative endorsement to be in education and to be able to apply for those vice principal jobs and my administrative license. I didn't learn as much in that process as I did from the LTI courses. Very real world, hands-on, daily applicable to the work of an athletic director in a school. It was game changing. So There's no way that I would ever go back and be in this role if I didn't have that training before. And I'm actually looking forward to move up to the next level and get my CMMA or CMAA fairly quickly. I've been looking at projects just because I can see some of the things I'm doing now will already fill those requirements and get me to that next step too. And I'm not normally that guy, right? Like I did get an Eagle Scout, but it was my mom pushing me. But now I can see the effect it has on me in my daily work, and I'm excited to take that step.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's my advice to you about the CMAA is it's like you said, my guess is you've probably already done something that counts as the project. So you just have to verify that and get going. So
yep.
I would encourage you to finish that. Good job. I want you to speak to, because there's not a whole lot of guests I've had on the show, on the podcast. I want you to talk about the scholarship program at the UIAAA, not the scholarship program for the kids, because we're familiar with that, and we have a lot of participants, which is great. But we began, I want to say, probably 8 or 9 years ago, scholarshiping 1 or 2 ADs a year to the national conference. We, as administrators of the UIAAA, think that it's just paid huge dividends. I want you to speak to that, because if I remember right, once again, I'm getting older, but you were one of the early people that applied for that and was able to attend a national conference. And then since, you're familiar with, because once you go once, they got you hooked, you have to go back. But I'll turn the mic over to you.
Yeah, you're nailing it on the head. And it was right about that time that I finished my certification. It was either the year of or year before or year after. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the scholarship came up and I applied. And I'll be honest, I didn't think I was going to get it. I was hopeful, but I'd kind of put it in the back of my mind. And then when I was selected and went to my principal, they were a little reluctant at first, but then I talked him into it and just wanted to try it out. It worked out really great for me, even though it was in December. It wasn't during a stretch of time where I had any home events and basketball games or wrestling games I had to cover. My teams were on the road, and it was just wonderful how it fit. But boy, yeah, go back. I want to so bad, and I'm super frustrated right now. I hope my son doesn't watch it this far if he sees this podcast, but he's got basketball games this year, and our superintendent in Canyons is super supportive, and they're going to send all of our ADs every other year. And I can't go because I'd have to miss like 4 of his games at a tournament this year as a junior at Alta. And you know how it is as a grandparent, I'm not going to miss those. You know, he's whittled it down to one sport and he's been highly successful, and I'm going to be there to watch. So, not going this year, but superintendent's been so gracious, and Tom Sherwood, our secondary ed director, district AD, the two of them are really advocates for what we're going to learn in those national conferences. And so I will get to go a lot in the future years. And my son's a junior, so I have like 2 more years that this could even be an issue. And then I'm on the docket. So no, we went to Orlando. What an experience. What, from getting off the plane and, showing up at the venue, what a wonderful hotel surrounded by a beautiful golf course. But then until you've been there, you really can't wrap your head around the number of athletic directors, the number of vendors, and then just the sheer offerings of LTI classes. They teach every single one. I was almost overwhelmed with the opportunities, and man, such a wonderful professional experience. And I've made friends. I made one in the elevator with an athletic director from Tennessee, and he and I have actually golfed together since then. A few years ago, and you exchange and you meet people and you realize we're all doing the same thing, and there's so many wonderful things, and it kind of opens your eyes and changes your perspective to a couple of things, right? The difference you can make, the difference other people make, the number of us that are in this good fight together to promote education-based athletics at that level. And just I keep remembering I got a couple of ideas in one of those that I was struggling with one of my coaches that was just, he was kind of a thorn in my side kind of guy, and was just doing the wrong things just to do them and kind of be a pest. And people do that, right? We all know people who do that in different situations, but they had talked in this conference that I went to, in Orlando, one of the presenters had talked about making that difference and investing in hard people. And I went back and was able to really make some changes for this guy. And he still was, he's still the same person, right? He didn't change really who he was, but our relationship changed. And I saw him make some of the efforts, similar efforts to what I was doing to invest in him as a coach. I saw him invest in some of his kids and even some of his harder kids. And I really feel like just that perspective of the presenter in that LTI course. And I wish I could remember what course it was. I remember that concept was something they just added that wasn't necessarily drawn out in the curriculum. They just said, hey, I got to share this because it applied to what we were talking about. And for them to share that really master level knowledge of people and coaches, it changed me and my job. And man, there's been a hunger ever since to go back. Unfortunately, it wasn't 1 or 2 years later I became the principal at UAB. I was able to send my athletic director out there to the national conference a couple times and pushed on him to go. And he loved it. And, I kept that going, but I haven't been back and need to. And yeah, it's coming. Like I said, my district supports it. It's on the docket. It's just going to be a dad for 2 more years first. And then, and who knows, maybe only 1 year, maybe next year they schedule better and I can come.
Yeah, well, that's I'm glad you mentioned that about your son, because that's the family is first. I know we all have jobs, or in my case had jobs, but and I'll echo the fact, because I've had Rick Robbins and Tom Sherwood both on the podcast. They are incredible supporters of high school athletics, and I thank them. Hopefully they'll be watching this, and they do a great job. Let me ask you this. What's one part of being an athletic director that you would like to debunk in the public's eye? Because they think all you do is this.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is they see me when I'm standing and kind of playing a role of proxemics in an event. They don't think we do much. There's kind of this perspective of, hey, you're going to go kind of out to pasture and you're a former coach, you're going to go sit. I've never had a job I worked harder at. There is always something, I kind of glance up and see the calendar I've got for the month of August, and I'm literally not bluffing. I have 2 days in the entire month from the 1st to the 31st, not counting Sundays, but 2 days in that entire month that don't have an athletic event on them. Every single day is full. I've got, some days as many as 4. I'm looking at August 24th. I've kind of pegged that one. I've got a soccer game, JV and sophomore football, volleyball out at Westlake, and a tennis match. All 4. We're packed up. I got to run and cover and be and do, and I don't think people understand, because when they show up for their child's one activity, they see me standing and maybe talking to officials, and if they're behaving, I'm not running around too much, right? I'm standing, and I think there's a perception that we don't grind that hard. But boy, I've never met a job where I invested more time and effort and road time, right? Traveling to games and
Sure.
Scheduling officials. And, even now, school hasn't started, teachers aren't back. I was in this building at 7:30 this morning, talking to coaches, getting ready for their seasons, helping golf coaches with Register My Athlete, working through stuff. It's, 3:00 right now. I'm not going home for dinner because tonight's the black and silver scrimmage. I got to go out here in a few minutes and check our portable sound system, because the sound system isn't replaced yet. And we got portable in there to help get us through these first couple things. And I think there's kind of a perception that I roll in when people roll into the game. It's not how the job works. If you can, hopefully everything's set up and there is a little bit of window, and sometimes I can sneak home because I'm so set up, but that didn't happen because I just waved the wand, right? I'm setting up tables, I'm putting out cash registers, I'm taking care of the boosters, and we're opening doors, we're scheduling officials, we're meeting them when they get there, we're meeting the opposing team when they get here, I'm changing light bulbs on a soccer scoreboard. I just think people don't understand the magnitude of the number of little jobs that have to get done for it to get pulled off. And even coaches and some individuals, if they see one thing missing from their program, they don't wrap their head around how many things we're doing for them. And I just think, man, to debunk that, if we could just have, I always want to joke with people about, hey, come spend a day in my life. Come, I could use an assistant for today. Come on with me. Let's go walk the walk, and you can come see what I do. And you can get out the tape measure when the official's wondering if the lines are wide enough on your soccer field, and you can measure for them. And, I've so many things, right? The mad parent at the game, people see that one if I'm exiting somebody out or talking to them and calming them down so they can come back in and watch their child. They see that piece. They don't see everything that goes into that moment and how much preparation happened in the background, and just the level it takes to get everybody there and to the table, and hiring and training coaches, right? Like, I haven't even skimmed on that, but so much of my time is spent helping coaches and coaching them through kids and parents and eligibility and every aspect of their life. I don't think parents understand how much is shared with coaches, how much kids rely on coaches to help be there for them. I rewind clear back to when I was a head basketball coach, and I had one of my players walk into my office, and it was a couple of weeks after the season was over. He walked into my office, and our conversation wasn't basketball and it wasn't school. Sorry. It was, hey, coach, I'm going to be a dad, but I don't know how to tell my dad that my girlfriend's expecting. And we had a 2-hour talk, and then he still wasn't comfortable. And I drove to his house with this kid, right? Well, how do you train a coach for that moment? Because they're going to have that relationship with their kids, that their players, when they need that kind of support, they're going to come to a coach. Well, how do you coach a coach to be ready for that, without going through that process? And sorry to get emotional, but I have to help coach all these coaches who are building these relationships with kids to be prepared for the unexpected, to be prepared for, hey, how do I tell my parents? Hey, I did this, right or wrong, what do I do? We're helping them navigate not just the mistakes on the athletic field, but the mistakes in their life. And when they learn to trust a coach with making mistakes on the athletic field, when they make a mistake in life, they're going to come back even after high school and ask for help doing that in their life. How do I fix this? How do I deal with this strikeout at the plate that I had in life? Hey, coach. And, coaching coaches to be prepared for those moments and to take a deep breath. And that comes back to that steady, right? Not getting too emotional in a win and not getting too emotional in a loss. And man, the level of just training and helping your coaches be that kind of person. I only handled that situation as a coach because Steve Hodson had been my athletic director and trained me how to coach in the first place, to where the curveball in life hit. I just handled it how I would have handled somebody going to a 1-3-1 trap that I wasn't ready for. We called timeout, we talked about it, we coached it up, and then I had to go walk it through with the kid, right? It was really no different than handling a hard situation as a coach, but I had been coached to do just that, to handle hard situations. So yeah, I know that was a long answer to how do you debunk the myth, but boy, athletic directors wear so many hats and do so many things that affect kids and coaches and schools. You've been in a school long enough that there's a different feeling in a school and a different culture in a school when you're winning football games. That first thing in the fall, you go win game 1, that first week of school is fun. Well, I also know you go lose football game 1, and then you turn around Monday for day 1 of school. That's a hard week. That is not, there's things that are just harder just because that feeling of we're winners isn't in the building. And I'm not talking about the 50 kids that were out there in a uniform. I'm talking the whole school. And I don't think people realize how different that feeling is. I've, in my 22 years in education, I've been blessed to experience both and learn from both. I've gone through, some hard days at a school that, lost a lot of players for certain reasons that, we won't go into detail. but we basically had all sophomores on our varsity football team. And that was a different kind of hard and a different kind of breakthrough and a different experience. And I've been on a loaded football team that wins a state championship and just, plays great all year long. That has a different kind of feel to it, right? You're doing different things, but there's some really good things, and there's still some things you have to stay on top of too. So, great things from both situations.
That is some great insight. Thank you so much for sharing. Jim, what's the favorite part of your job?
I love it all. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle. I've said that a couple of times. I think that's how I got my first job as an AD. They said, "Are you ready for the time commitment?" And I said, "It's not a time commitment, it's a lifestyle." And coming from coaching 3 different sports, I was already living the lifestyle. I was already in the building. I was already seeing the kids. Not quite at the level I understood. It is more, but it is a lifestyle. The games are the rewards. The kids, the relationships, those are rewards. There's a lot of work that goes into it. But if you're trying to live a different lifestyle on the side and just kind of do it part-time, I think you're missing some of the real benefits and blessings of being a high school athletic administrator. Man, jump in. And if I could just say, grab any of those young ADs and say, don't be afraid of this. Bring your family, bring your kids. My wife has come to so many high school events, and luckily I went right into that job when my kids were hitting school, right? And so a lot of them were our own kids' events. But what an experience to raise my family as a part of high school athletics has been just awesome. They've learned so many great things from great coaches and just, man, so fun. So fun. And even coming to events with me. My last daughter that graduated last year, that's at BYU, the same golfer that's doing unified golf that I shared a minute ago, she was actually the photographer for the yearbook and the editor for the yearbook. And her senior year, she hopped in the car with dad and went to almost every event just because she wanted to go take pictures. And boy, I tell you what, her being a part of that lifestyle with me and going to all these different events and being able to share that part of my life with her was just awesome. I'll never forget that. That was cool.
That's great. Let's finish with a couple of questions. The first being this: you have 2 suggestions for a brand new AD. They need to follow Jim Langford's suggestions in order to be a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
Boy, number 1, get certified. That's going to do a couple of different things. It's going to teach you some things classroom knowledge wise that you need to do your job good. It's also going to put you elbow to elbow with other athletic administrators in those classes and mentors that you can call and ask and say, hey, what would you do? Those are some cool conversations. And then the second advice I would give, man, if in doubt, pick up the phone. I think too many people nowadays just assume everybody knows. Man, call parents, call coaches, call the opposing team, call the bus garage, wear your phone out. Communicate, ask. That, you cannot overdo communication. It's critical. Don't just assume because you asked it once or sent it in an email, it's going to get done. And when I say pick up the phone and use it, do that. But also, man, know when your practices start. Be there in that 10-15 minutes before practice to tell coach good luck. And if there's something you need to talk to him about, talk to him about it. Even the little things. Hey, your bus is at 4:00. Hey, this is at this time. Walk things to them, shake their hands, see them, be visible, not just on game day. Be visible at the end of those practices. And I know that one's hard because sometimes you're on the road or doing other events, but make it a point sometimes to be there when practice is letting out and just kind of mulling around and talking and how things go. Ask how they went, let them talk. So, there's a lot of good things there that you can do that way too. Those would be the 2 things.
Great suggestions. We'll finish with this. Jim, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
You're pretty good, Hutch. I don't know. Man, you asked a lot of good things. You didn't ask me what my favorite golf course was, though. Come on.
Okay, well, there you go. What is your favorite golf course? Since I just played 18 at Bonneville yesterday.
Bonneville, there you go. That's not bad. I'd have to say my favorite golf course is Gladstone in Payson. And that's really because of my childhood memories. That was a course that my buddies and I could get to from Utah County and play cheap and play often. And it's not the same course it was. It's been a little tricky. whoever went in and put in those 2 new holes and dug a moat around what is now 18. They ate my ball without me knowing that pond was there the first time I played it after they put it in. But what a beautiful course in the mountains of Utah. If anybody from not Utah's listening to this, there's 3 or 4 courses in our mountains. I would say get up and play Gladstone. Man, get up there and play Wasatch and Mountain, and man, there's a couple.
Yeah, Gladstone. That one across the big, I guess I call it the big ravine.
Yeah,
that's eaten plenty of my balls. So
yeah, that's a fun hole too.
I understand what you're saying. With that lighter look at some of the golf courses in Utah, that finishes up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guest today has been Jim Langford, Certified Athletic Administrator and the Director of Athletics at Alta High School. Jim, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Hutch.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.